You are listening to the Lawyer Life Podcast, episode number 33, When Practicing Law Just Isn't Enough. It's truly amazing to me how often I encounter women who are chomping at the bit to leave the practice of law for good or to do something else that they have kept hidden and secret for years on years. Today, I'm sharing tidbits from those conversations to help you craft your own path forward and potentially your own exit from law, whether in whole or in part. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Lawyer Life Podcast. If you are here, I promise you it is for a reason. Maybe you're a practicing attorney, maybe you are a professional woman, and you just know deep down that something is missing, and you're ready to manifest the life and the career that better aligns with who you are and who you want to be. If you are someone that's wanting more balance, more happiness, and fulfillment in their career, you are in the right spot. I am your host, Autumn Noble, and I am a practicing attorney as well as a life and career coach for attorneys. I have devoted my entire legal career as well as my coaching business to helping women succeed in law. We all know that women are leaving the legal industry at a rate much higher than our male counterparts, and I am here to change that. If you want to transform your legal practice, create your own space, find some independence, and build your own practice that gives you flexibility and control over your career, you are in the right spot. I have helped hundreds of women from all over the world transform their legal careers. And yes, sometimes that means pivoting out of law altogether. This podcast and the Lawyer Life Collective will provide you with everything that you need to do just that. And I am so happy that you are here and joining us on this journey. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Lawyer Life Podcast. Today, we are talking about what to do in our careers when we start to feel that heavy realization that the path that we have chosen is simply not enough and there's something missing. It's truly amazing to me how often I encounter women who are chomping at the bit to leave the practice of law for good or to do something else that they have kept hidden and secret for years on years. Many of these women already have an idea of what they want to do. Some of them have side gigs that they've started, and others are just clinging to these secret hopes and plans that they have stuffed away in the closet, waiting for a rainy day or waiting for that time when they have more space and energy in their life to explore the things that they're really passionate about. Today, I'm sharing tidbits from those conversations to help you craft your own path forward and potentially your own exit from law, whether in whole or in part. And I'm also sharing with you why it's so important that we pay attention to that part of ourselves that is wanting something more. So let's start this little adventure by going all the way back to Autumn as a little girl. And if you had seen me when I was a child and looked at what was in my room, you would find the weirdest arrangement of books and astrology readings and fortune telling guides. I was really into Wicca and witchcraft, and we lived on this farm out in the middle of nowhere. And we had kind of this timberland around us. And I would love to go down there and like pretend that I was making some potions or looking for some magical herbs. And because we lived out so far out of town, we would periodically get these sort of traveling textbook salespeople. And I don't know if they thought that because we were so unattached to society, we didn't have access to like modern day information or the internet. I don't know. And when I was a little kid, the internet wasn't really a thing. So maybe this held more importance back then. But they would come by and they would try and sell my parents on, it was usually books of encyclopedias. And naturally, having 4 kids, they eventually did buy these big collections of encyclopedias. And they were really cool at the time. And we were always kind of going through them and exploring them. But there was one point in time where one of the book collections that was being sold, I want to say it was like a Times or a People magazine, some big well-known publisher had this set, but it was like the weirdo set. It was like psychic travels and astral projection and witchcraft. And I tell you what, that set my parents bought and I obsessed over it. I don't know why they bought it. Maybe one of them is a little bit weird, like I am deep down at their core, but I have those books to this day. I can look across my room and I can see them because I loved them so much. And if you peeked at me in my bedroom as a little girl sometimes, there was a section in one of the books on bending spoons with your mind. And so I went through this whole phase where I was trying to bend spoons with my brain because the book made it sound like it was really easy. And let me tell you, it was not. So the long and short of it is, as a kid, I was always very interested in very strange, kind of esoteric, religious and nature types of topics. Fast forward to high school, and whenever anyone asks, like, "Oh, what's your favorite topic in high school?" I think about this class, and I don't remember the name of the class, but I remember the gist of it was that we were studying different cultures from all over the world. And in one segment of the course, we were studying different faiths and their approach to death and dying and their cultural practices around it. And I loved it. I thought it was so fascinating. Their different approaches to the afterlife and the meaning of life and how we honor that in death and all of that. So here we go off to college, and I major in religious studies because that's what I was passionate about. I decided that in order to appease my parents, I probably also needed to major in political science because I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. And that was probably going to get me there, even though I couldn't care less about political science. I really wanted to go and talk to my Buddhism professor about Buddhism and yoga and meditation and all that good stuff. So then we get to law school, and I realized that I really missed the boat with studying abroad in undergrad. And I decided to study abroad in law school. And I ended up going to China because I wanted to get to these temples. I wanted to see the faith in action. I wanted to see people doing Tai Chi in the morning and like really connect with that. And that was a huge driver for me in studying abroad in China. Why are we talking about this? In coaching, I talk a lot about the yin and yang of life. And I usually talk about it in the context of all of the people in our lives, all of our experiences, our jobs, our relationships are 50-50. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not so great. And that is what we sign up for. And we don't often take that concept of 50-50 and apply it to ourselves, but it works there too, because as humans, we are a balance of yin and yang, of masculine and feminine energy. And what I have seen time and time again in coaching women and in my own legal career is that we tend to find ourselves in spaces, in careers that neglect one half of our own innate yin and yang. And I found for myself in the legal profession, living in this world that's very masculine dominated, that's really driven by those masculine traits, I was losing and feeling very disconnected from that part of myself that was more feminine and that was more interested in emotions and kind of esoteric things and, getting connected with my intuition and my inner self. And as the years went on, that disconnect felt like a very heavy chasm. At my very first firm, they had a yoga instructor that would come on site over the lunch hour. And it was sort of one of those things that like they make it available, but it's always very uncomfortable because no one really wants you losing a billable hour going to yoga. They want you working, but they offered it and it was sort of like, oh, we do this for you. You know how it is. Many of you that work at firms, they offer these things, but it's sort of taboo to utilize them. Well, I had never really formally gotten into yoga outside of my studies of Buddhism and some of the origins of yoga. And so I thought, I'm going to go. And again, I'm in this space, this very masculine space. I'm very unhappy. And I'm starting to feel very disconnected from that part of myself that was always there as a child, as a little girl in high school and in college. And so I'm in this yoga class. And at the end of the yoga class, we're lying in the final shavasana and she comes around with lavender oil and she touches our third eye chakra, right in the middle, of your forehead and between your eyebrows. And I'll never forget it. This woman, something happened to me when she touched me. It was almost like this awakening, this like being overcome with like love and connectedness. And I know this sounds really crazy, but there's a reason I'm sharing all this with you. This woman has become my spiritual coach, my spiritual mentor. I got my Reiki mastery training through her. I meet with her regularly, for energy work and guidance. And she's amazing. But I do think that there was a reason that I connected with her at that firm, and that there was something in her that when she touched me, when she connected with me, it reminded me of that other part of myself that was there and really wanting to get out. When I started on this coaching journey, one of the things that she really stressed to me was this idea of the yin and yang and this whole concept of who I am. 50% hippie and 50% lawyer is really kind of how I describe myself. And when I started coaching, especially coaching women lawyers, I felt like I needed to just focus on kind of the masculine side. Like, we're lawyers, we want the business. Like, how is this going to work? And what are the results that you've seen? And over time, I've started to feel once again disconnected from that part of myself. And so I'm really working to integrate the woo woo, the hippie part of who I am into this work so that my coaching practice better aligns with who I am as a person, because that is why I pivoted away from practicing law, because I was losing sight and losing connection with that part of myself that had always been there. And when I trace my history back, and I see those moments that were really aha moments, they were often tied to spirituality and connectedness and intuitive type of work. And so my coaching business is an answer to that calling, and really saying, the legal profession wasn't addressing that part of myself enough. And when I was doing coaching on the side of my legal profession, it was almost kind of killing me to have to switch between that masculine energy in my legal work and then back to that feminine energy in my coaching work. And that was when I knew I was on to something, and I needed to attend to that part of myself even more than I was. As I've been thinking about the topic of today's podcast episode, I knew that I wanted to share a little bit of my story with you, and about this desire to fully integrate who I am in my life and in my career. And it started in my legal profession, and it sort of led me down this path. And as I started thinking about this topic, it's like the universe stood up and said, yes, this is what we need to talk about, because every coaching session that I have had since I decided this was the topic for today's episode has been women who are wanting more in their legal career. They're wanting to address that other side of themselves, that passion, that creativity, the creation part of themselves that they're not getting in law. And I think it really speaks to the challenge that we have, I think, as humans, but especially as women. We have this tendency to show up 110% as the lawyer, as the mom, as the wife. And in doing so, we forget that there's so much more to us than those roles. And when we show up 110% in any of those roles, we are inherently neglecting or even rejecting another part of ourselves. And over time, it creates a tremendous amount of deep-seated, I think, pain that needs to eventually be addressed. And I think it does drive a lot of our unhappiness in our careers. And so today I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important to embrace that whole, that yin and yang of who we are, and find ways to balance our masculine energy of our careers with the other parts of ourselves. But I want to give you some tips to think about, to give you a practical guide of how to approach making space for something else in your life. Maybe you want to pivot away from law completely. Maybe you want to pivot away from law just in part. Maybe you just want a little bit more space to explore the things that do bring you happiness and joy. And so that is my goal today. I'm going to tick through some very practical tools to help you figure out how to make space for that part of yourself when you know there's something missing and you know that you're wanting more. And my question for you is, are you neglecting part of who you are? And is there a pattern of that part of you cropping up and saying, hello, pay attention to me over the course of your life? That is a really big sign that there's something important that you need to do with your life and that we need to pay more attention to. And that may require some shifts in our professional lives. I want to take a moment to stress why I think this is so important. I often have calls with women, and I felt this myself as well in practice, but the women are often asking me, how do I show up more assertive, more confident? How do I fit that role of a general counsel and how I carry myself and who I'm supposed to be? I get a lot of questions about how do I mold myself to be more masculine in this space that's what they want me to be. And my answer to that is the legal industry, the legal profession needs you to be wholly and completely you. It needs more of that feminine energy, because when you can bring your whole self to your work, you're going to be happier and clients are going to pick up on that. And people are going to want to connect with people that have that energy, as opposed to the energy of someone who's trying to be something that they're not because they think that that's what they need to be. And I did it to myself as well. I remember joining a firm and feeling like it was a very masculine kind of old boys club and trying to mold myself in a way that I felt like I was like one of the boys and one of the guys. And I remember sometimes the things that I would say, and it's like looking back, who were you trying to be? That's not who you are. It was me trying to be what I thought they wanted me to be, trying to get them to accept me. And I truly believe that that's part of the reason we leave the legal profession, because we're so sick of trying to be something that we're not. And so my recommendation is figure out who you are as a whole and what part of you you've been neglecting, and try and craft a way to bring that with you to work or to attend to it more, which may require something on the side or making a shift in your legal career. It's different for everybody. So how do we move forward and make those kinds of changes? First and foremost, when we embark on this journey, we have to start getting clear on the part of ourself that we want to pay more attention to. What is missing? And I want to offer you a few prompts to help you explore that. And side note, if you are subscribed to our newsletter, the newsletter that comes out this Friday is focused exclusively on things that you can do to help you better understand your passions and where you want to be spending your energy. So if you're not a member of the newsletter, or if that's something that interests you, head over to thelawyerlifecollective.com and make sure you sign up to get that next edition that's coming out this Friday. But for now, as you make this exploration, consider the following questions. As you evaluate your days, were there parts of it that filled you up and excited you? And why? For me, when I did this exploration, it became very clear to me that where I was finding passion and where I was really entering into that flow state and not caring about the phone or the emails or the project, what put me into that headspace was sitting down with the women around me and connecting with them. What was working? What wasn't working? How are you doing? How can we shift that? And I realized that it was the coaching connection with these women that was keeping me going. It wasn't the legal work. And that was a huge aha for me. So an important question to ask yourself in this exploration is, what part of your days fill you up and excite you? Were there things that you were doing that sparked joy or that put you into that flow state? And the more clear you can get on those, the more you can potentially trace those back through your life and see if there's a pattern there. In contrast, were there parts of your day that made it difficult for you to engage with the activity at hand? And why was that? And again, when I was doing this whole exploration, I recognized that when I sat down to do a lot of legal work, like the actual legal work, my energy just dropped. It's like, it felt very rote. It's like, okay, I know how to do this. Yes, this is a process, and, want. I just was not into it. So being good at something and being paid to do something does not necessarily mean that that is your greatest contribution. And so we want to start paying attention to how our energy fluctuates based upon the tasks that we're doing. Similarly, you might ask yourself, are there activities that made it difficult for you to stay engaged? You start the project and 5 minutes in, you're like, I want to go, talk to so-and-so, or I want to go get some Starbucks. Why is that? What is it about that task that makes it really difficult for you to stay plugged in? Working through this kind of an examination, it's going to help you get clear on the parts of your life and the parts of your career that are sapping your energy or are no longer engaging. And it could provide a simple roadmap for adjustments that can be made to find more happiness and fulfillment in your existing state. You might even be surprised parts of your day that get you into the flow state. And you might even be able to start noticing patterns that can help you redesign where you are to include more of those things without any need to exit completely. On the other hand, this experiment can provide a bit of a wake-up call. If you find that your work rarely provides activities that energize you, excite you, or put you into a flow state, it's likely that small adjustments are not going to resolve the issue. And some kind of a pivot may be in order. What I have seen again and again in my coaching business is that the piece that's missing, the piece that my clients are wanting more of, is that other more feminine side of themselves, the creative side, the intuitive side, the softer side, which goes back to this concept of finding your yin and yang and finding a way in your life to attend to it, either in your current space or by making an adjustment. Second, get clear on your finances. A dwindling bank account will be the most significant impediment that you will run into that will keep you from making the leap. Spending time evaluating this part of your life will help you be brave and know how much runway you have to make things happen and to make these changes. For instance, if you want to devote more time to a passion project or make more space to attend a yoga class regularly, this may require you to bill less at your firm. And I want you to really be honest with yourself about that, because thinking that we can just pile these things on top of our already busy schedule is a non-starter. If you could make space for it where you are, you probably already would. And so this analysis is going to really force you to decide, am I willing to pull back one part of my life to make more time for this other piece of myself? And if the answer is yes, we have to examine some of the potential hurdles that could await us when we start making those changes. If you want to go to yoga more regularly, you might have to bill less. And so we want to start getting clear on what are the impacts of your billables going down. Do we know what that means for you and your finances? Similarly, if you're wanting to start a side gig, there's probably going to be some costs involved in it. And do we have cash set aside for something like that? And then on the far end of the spectrum, if you are thinking about leaving law cold turkey or even just changing jobs, you're going to need some clarity around your finances and consider, especially, how much money does it take for me to live for 1 month right now? Is there room for movement? Is there flexibility there? Because once you have that number, you can start to build in some insulation for yourself. If you decide to quit cold turkey, if your finances suddenly change, you can look at that number and have some confidence and trust. I'm going to be okay for XYZ number of months. It's amazing how often I talk to women who are ready to quit law without even answering this question. And I will tell you, when you quit or make a change and you're not sure how long you can live without a steady stream of income or with a sudden change in your income, you're going to panic and you're going to grab for the first lifeline that comes your way. And it's probably going to be a job that looks exactly like the one that you left. And so we just keep going around and around and around. When we don't have clarity around our finances, it's difficult to imagine that any kind of a pivot or a change is possible. And we relinquish our power to those lovely golden handcuffs. But once we know our bare minimum expenses and our cushion expenses, we can get a sense of how much money we need to save to protect this great baby dream that we're suddenly growing. Third, develop a detailed plan. I know this seems very obvious, but it's a lot more subtle than you think. The most difficult part about transitioning from a traditional singular job to a more varied work life is that the options suddenly available to you are endless, as well as the projects and tasks that you want to accomplish. And suddenly it feels like we're just drowning in dreams and goals and to dos and possibilities and ideas. And it is incredibly overwhelming. The most important thing you can do is develop a clear plan, addressing the most important items first. It's really easy to be overwhelmed by all the things that you want to do in this new creative space that you're creating, where you now have an abundance of time, especially if you pivot away from law completely or quit cold turkey. You will have so much time that you don't know what to do with it. And we end up getting paralyzed by possibilities. In those spaces, we have to exercise constraint and really focus to ensure that we give the dream the most ample opportunity to succeed. And this may mean deciding which areas of your dream to focus on in the short term and planning to attend to the others later on and really sticking to it and holding yourself to it. When I started integrating coaching into my legal practice on the side, there were a million things that I wanted to do, but I knew I had limited time because this was something I was doing on the side to try and answer that call in myself. And so I had to really decide and make some difficult choices about where I wanted to focus my energy and what I would put on the shelf for the time when I finally left law for good. And truthfully, it was kind of a painful process. And I think that's ultimately what drove me to pivot more completely and stop doing this just on the side, because it caused me such pain to not be able to do all of those things that I was so excited about and so passionate about, but yet live over here in this kind of masculine world that was not lighting me up at all. And that dichotomy, I think, is what really made me wake up and realize, holy cow, like this is not what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I think I'm supposed to be doing this over here instead. But to get through that time and to get my financial plan in order, I had to, baby step my dream and focus on one or two things and let the rest go and trust myself that I would come back to them in the future when I was ready. Fourth, embrace a new identity. And this is a big one, but it's also a really painful one. I hear all of the time, I'm not sure who I am if I'm not a lawyer. If I scale back my practice, what are people going to think about me? Am I still a lawyer if I'm only practicing part-time? Are people going to judge me? Which is really code for I'm judging myself for practicing in that way. This goes back to my earlier comment about how we are all yin and yang. We're a mix of masculine and feminine and different interests and different things that light us up, that we're so much more complex than simply our jobs. And that question, who am I if I'm not a lawyer, is a sure sign that we have taken our identity and put it 110% on the career. And that is a surefire way to ignore the other parts of you that are just as important. And that stress and that tension of being 110% lawyer is what really creates the pain that we're living in. We know there's something more. We know that we need to do something more in addition to practicing law. And it's because we have made being a lawyer the most important thing. And we have made it the focus of the vast majority of our energies. And that is something that we have to not only unravel in making these kinds of pivots and adjustments, but it also calls us to unravel that intermixing of identity with career. Who are we if we're not traditional practicing lawyers? How do we describe ourselves to people if maybe we're teaching yoga as well as practicing law? When people ask what you do, what do you say? Well, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a yoga instructor, or I'm a yoga instructor and I'm also a lawyer. Do you say either? We really have to start answering those questions for ourselves. How do you want to describe yourself to people? Do you still want to call yourself a lawyer, and why? All of those questions are important to tackle, especially when we're making a pivot completely away from law. And we see that sort of part of ourselves and part of our identity sunsetting. It creates this vacuum of, gosh, like, who am I? Like, how do I answer the question? Tell me about yourself, or what do you do? These questions are so important to tackle now because they will impact your ability to promote your new endeavor, to engage with your new endeavor, to speak confidently about it, but also to believe in its efficacy. If we don't have a clear sense of our new identity and who we are in this space, we will always be looking backwards to that identity that we left behind and wondering if that version of ourselves is the truer one, even though we knew it wasn't. And that's why we went down this path. We start to question it when we have nothing else to kind of point to tell ourselves who we are. So perhaps this should be our first step in making the pivot or making an adjustment to your life. But whenever you tackle it, make sure that you give it the time and attention it deserves. Part of our job in building a new side gig or redesigning our life is getting out there and meeting people and telling them about this new part of you and this new endeavor and what you do and the problem that you solve. If you're having those conversations and still believing that you should be an attorney, and that's the identity that's most important, you have failed before you've even begun. We have to find a place for our new path and our new identity to merge and coexist with our identity as attorneys. Now, I always joke I'm 50% hippie and 50% lawyer, and I don't mean it as a joke because that is really who I am. And that is the best way to describe me. And when I show up bringing both of those halves of myself with me in everything that I do, everything good flows from that. And the tension of trying to be completely one or the other washes away. So what I would offer to you here is that if you're thinking about making some kind of a pivot or an adjustment to your legal career and make space for something else, you might not know right away how you want to describe yourself, and that's okay. But what I would encourage you to do is to no longer open and lead with, I'm an attorney, and see how that feels and see how it sits with you. And maybe it comes out later in conversation that you're an attorney, but lead instead with your interests, with what you're exploring, and see where that takes you. And then from there, maybe you'll be able to better describe who you are and what you do that doesn't start with, I'm an attorney. Protect your identity is the very last step in this process. And I get a lot of challenge on this, but I really maintain its importance. Be very thoughtful of who you share your dream with. Even if it's, I want to go part-time at the firm because I want to be more of a present mom or a present wife, or maybe it's, I want to go part-time at the firm or work 40 hours a week at the firm because I want to teach yoga, or maybe I want to write a book, or maybe I want to, be a hiking guide, something like that, whatever it may be. Not everyone in your orbit is going to get it. And not everyone is going to be responsible enough to be trusted with your dream in its infancy. It's not about hiding your new identity, and it's not about being shameful of the path that you've chosen. It's about putting yourself in the best position to believe that it's possible. The people in your life that have been with you along your legal journey, they're always going to think about you as a lawyer. They have preconceived notions about who you are and what you're capable of based upon your past and your prior path of becoming a lawyer. And it's possible that this new identity and this new adventure will contradict everything that they thought they knew about you and will cause some dissonance for them. And that dissonance will come out of their mouth at you. This is not going to be helpful for you in this journey and embracing your new identity. They are entitled to their opinions, and that's perfectly fine. But at the early stages, we may not be in a space to hear those criticisms and hear that feedback and maintain our belief. In time, you can share this endeavor with everyone in your orbit, but at its infancy, be thoughtful about who you share it with and who you let in on your dream. in order to protect yourself and your dream as it grows. It's like you have a newborn baby. You're not just going to let anybody hold it. You're going to let the people hold it that you trust, right? Keep that baby close until it's ready to protect itself and fend for itself, and then bring it out into the world. At that point, when you are confident in your own concept and redesign of who you are, those criticisms are only going to strengthen you instead of making you second guess yourself. But we don't want to open yourself up to that until you're truly ready. In sum, if you are looking to make a change to your career, if there's a part of yourself that's just begging to be brought out into the light and is sick of being put on the back burner, I would love to meet you and I would love to hear about your plans. I know firsthand how challenging and lonely it can be to make those kinds of changes, to pull back the reins on this prestigious career that you've created and to go after what you really want and put yourself out there and be vulnerable in a new kind of a way. And I am so thankful for every opportunity that I have to lend support to other brave women who are doing the same thing. There are so many of us out there wanting more from our careers, wanting our legal career to be a little bit different, and wanting to find ways to bring our whole self into our life. And I want to impress upon you that it's possible. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. But I do truly believe that this disconnect from the feminine side of ourselves, living in this masculine heavy world, is a lot of the reason that we leave law, because sometimes we feel like that's the only way that we can be wholly and completely who we are and make space for all those pieces of ourselves. And I don't believe that that's true. And I have the pleasure of seeing it every day. Whether you're just scaling back to make time for a passion project, maybe you're building something on the side, maybe you're pivoting completely. Every path is different, but that path is available to you. And if it's on your mind, it's there for a reason. And I would really encourage you not to ignore it. Thank you so much for joining me today and hearing all about my journey. As I said, if we haven't met and you want to talk through your big dream and plans, please reach out and schedule a free consultation. It is linked in the show notes, or head over to thelawyerlifecollective.com to sign up. I hope to meet you all soon. A little postscript for you today. I'm going to let you in on a little tidbit of what we are doing in the Lawyer Life Collective these days. As you may recall, over the last several months, I have offered various iterations of my seminar series, How to Lawyer for Real, and also Finding Fulfillment in Law. And here's what I have found. The content is unbelievable and powerful and life-changing, and people are loving it. What are people not loving? Showing up for a live seminar at the same time every week. And I hear you. I remember when I was in practice and I signed up for something very similar that my coach was offering, and I think I made it to 1 out of 6 because life is busy and we are busy. And it's impossible sometimes to show up at the same time for something every single week. So here's what we are doing. We are preparing a full revamp of How to Lawyer for Real as well as Finding Fulfillment, and we are rolling them out as email programs. So when you sign up, you will get 6 weeks of content. Every week we'll have a video with the lesson. It's going to have links to additional readings and additional podcast episodes, as well as workbooks to take every topic as deep as you have time to go. That means that you can get all of the goodness of How to Lawyer for Real and Finding Fulfillment in Law for a significantly reduced price and do it at your own pace as those resources trickle into your inbox over the course of several weeks. And they are yours to keep forever. I can't wait to roll this out, and I can't wait to see how many more lives and how many more women we are able to help by making this content available on demand in this kind of a way. Keep an eye on your email if you're subscribed to our newsletter list. The rollout date will be coming soon. In keeping with the theme of this podcast and making sure that I fully integrate all aspects of myself into the podcast, but also the offerings of the Lawyer Life Collective. In 2 weeks, I will be releasing the next episode in our guided meditation series. And the topic of that meditation will be how to trust yourself and your intuition as you find your own unique path forward. As I discussed in last month's podcast, meditation was a huge turning point for me, not only in transforming my career, but helping me figure out what I wanted in my life and end the relationships around me that had become toxic and unsafe. I'm hopeful that in providing you these guided meditations, you will be able to leverage this truly powerful tool to change any aspect of your life and develop more clarity around what you want. I hope you are enjoying them as much as I am. I would love to hear from you and get your feedback on what you are doing with the meditations and how you are finding them helpful. Please feel free to reach out with any comments or questions to autumn@thelawyerlifecollective.com.